Today, we have Jelly Valimont back with us, and I'm so excited because we are going to be talking about expectations on pastors' kids. And if you have PKs or if you're planning to have PKs someday, you're going to want to watch this. Jelly, thank you for joining us
Thank
again.
you. Thank you, Jan. It's good to be with you again.
I was raised in a pastor's home. I'm married to a pastor, and I am a pastor. I've experienced hurt through criticism, rejection, and the way people have treated my children. We will be discussing these subjects and so much more right here on Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife.
So let's talk about PKs for a little bit. What do you
Okay.
think are some unrealistic expectations on pastors' kids?
I think they're probably the same as they are on the pastor,
Mm.
but at a greater level. They have this, too many people think the pastor's kids need to be perfect. They need to dress perfectly. They need to behave perfectly. They need to be examples. They need to be leaders. And a lot of people have the idea that the pastor's family has achieved a certain level of
Mm.
maturity that maybe they haven't achieved or their family hasn't achieved, and as a result of that, they put these just impossible ideas and expectations on children. I remember when, and I think I referenced this in my book, when Jordan was in first grade, she got in trouble at school, and she's my oldest, and she came home and told me that she had, what she had done, and I said, well, what did your teacher do? And she said, well, she told me that my daddy was a pastor, and I should never have behaved like that, and that
Mm.
I could affect his job. And I looked at her and I said, no, she didn't. And she said, yeah. Well, the next day, Randy and I were both up there because this was a pastor's wife that said that.
Oh.
And she was also a school teacher. So so it goes across the board. It's not just one person that often has the idea that children need to be perfect, especially preachers' kids need to be perfect. But they have these unrealistic expectations, and as they get older, they think that the children need to be examples. They think that they should be the ones who lead the youth group. They should be the ones that keep the other children in line, and so it's a difficult thing to have our children um, to live with these expectations, and yet they're there.
Mhm.
I don't know that there's anything we can do to keep people from having these expectations. It's how we deal with them as parents,
Yes.
as ministry people from that point. I I know one time Danielle was, I think she was about in sixth grade, and we had music camp every summer for our children. And she decided that she didn't want to be in music camp, and she hated it. She hated the program. It was only a week program, but she just really hated it. And so she just had a bad attitude, and we had a sit down, and I said, if you step away from music camp now, then all of your friends are going to follow you because you're a leader.
Mm. Mhm.
And then it's going to be a problem for the program. It's going to be a problem for the production, and so I just kind of laid it out for her. And she said, but I hate it. It's so lame. It's so stupid. Sixth graders are so well versed in their adjectives. She just really did not want to do it. So we had to come to an agreement. And the agreement was that she would have a good attitude and she would do this music camp, but that she would never be required to do another music camp, and she would not be required to do any productions that she didn't want to be a part of. And when she didn't do the productions in the following years, there were people that were in our church that said, well, why is Danielle not in it? And I said, she didn't want to be. And that was the end of it. Because we all know that if
Mhm.
children don't want to do something and they're required to do it, a lot of times it shows on their faces. And if
Yes.
it's a public situation, we don't want that to happen. We don't want their faces to show that they, how mad they are to be a part of it. And then when the decision was finally put in Danielle's hands as to what she did, when she was 16 years old, she decided she wanted to start doing drama again. And so she had the starring role in one of our productions, one of our Christmas productions. And then she went on to be a demon in our Easter productions for years and years and years. And she loved it. But it's a lot of times the expectations that are placed on our kids, on our PKs, are just totally and completely ridiculous. And so we have to deal with those the best way we possibly can. And each situation is different. I always required that my kids go to church, and they always go to youth group. They don't have a choice. And they always went to church. They always went to kids' church. They didn't have the ability to make that decision as to whether or not they didn't go. It was only as they became adults that they were able to make those decisions as to what they were involved in. And, well, not adults, but probably, high school, what the extracurricular activities that they chose to be involved in. And, sometimes people would call me and tell on my kids, hey, I saw Jordan pulling out of the parking lot and she had 4 people in her car and she was screaming the wheels. And, and so, Jordan, did you do that? Yeah, I did. Okay, just don't do it again. And you need to call this person and apologize for her. And she did, and it was not a problem. So each situation, each expectation has to be taken, and has to be taken and addressed at that particular time. And then there may be times that we just need to sit our kids down and say, hey, what are the pressures you're feeling right now? One of the things that I tried to tell Randy, and because he was not in ministry, he had no perspective for this. But I told him, I said, people will put pressure on our children to do things that they don't want to do, and to be who they do not want to be. And I said, in addition to that, they'll not only put the expectations on it, but they will expect kids to, how can I say this? They'll expect children to be who they are not in order to fulfill what they think that what the other person or the people in the church or the people in the community expect them to do and be. We have always tried to allow our kids to be what God has called them to be. I have 2 daughters that are very musical. One who is Danielle she can sing, she doesn't enjoy it. She is an excellent photographer, an excellent writer. So she found her own little niche. Another thing that we found that is very pivotal for pastors and pastors' wives to understand is that sometimes people will try to get close to your kids to get information from you or about your family. And so we had to teach our children, what goes on at home and what goes on in private and what goes on at the church cannot be talked about to other people. And people would come to me and say, hey, I asked Elena about this person and she wouldn't tell me anything. And I said, good. They weren't supposed to tell you anything, but that's because that's private information. Well, I asked what you guys do on family night and your girls wouldn't tell me. Okay. And I just leave it at that. So there are different ways to deal with situations that occur in the pastor's home and with the pastor's kids. But as I've stated, in a roundabout way, each one has to be dealt with, and it has to be dealt with on an individual basis.
Right. Well, that's some good wisdom. Thank you so much. So, Jelly, how should we respond to the unrealistic expectations put upon our children?
I think, first of all, we have to address it.
Mm.
We have to address it first of all with the child and find out how they're dealing with the extra pressure and what they think should happen. I think then we may also have to address it with the person if it continues. One of
Mm-hmm.
the things that that growing up in a pastor's home that I always tried to remember when I was raising my children is that when my daddy preached on Sunday mornings, if he preached about something on Sunday mornings, he lived it throughout the week.
Mm-hmm.
And I never had to question hypocrisy in my father's or my mother's lives. And same thing in my family. As I was raising my children, as Randy and I were raising our children, we did not want to have one message going out on Sunday and live a different lifestyle Monday to Saturday. And so as parents, as preachers, as pastors, then I think we have to have the same message. If we're trying to develop holiness in our children, then we better display it and we better live it every day of our lives, all day long. And if we're trying to produce self-confidence or self-control or meekness or temperance or any of the gifts of the Spirit, we better display it. We better have it as a part of our lives also. We always taught our kids as they were growing up that they are Christians first.
Yeah, we did too.
And so they have to respond as a Christian would respond. They don't do something because they're pastors' kids. They do something because they're Christians. They do something because it's the right thing to do. And as a result of that, our children were better able to deal with the pressure that was put on them. We deal with it with our children and within our home, and then we deal with it with the church people as much as possible. So you live what you preach. You teach your children to be Christ-like. And let me just throw something in here real quickly. We all know that our children, I shouldn't say ours, but most children, when they're little, they're going to test the boundaries. They may throw a temper tantrum in the middle of the sanctuary on a Sunday morning because they don't want to go to the nursery, or they do want to go to the nursery and they need to be in the service for some reason, or maybe there's nobody to do the nursery today. So we know that kids are going to test the boundaries, and as they age, their temper tantrums are just going to change. They may not be throwing themselves on the floor and screaming and yelling in the middle of the sanctuary, but they may sit with their arms crossed and not want to stand during praise and worship. They may have different attitudes that are displayed. But regardless, we address those situations as much as possible. And you choose your battles. You don't always want to have a war on Sunday morning after church. You don't come home from church and tell your kids everything they did wrong at church, and discipline them for their misbehavior. But inevitably, there will be some pastors' homes that have a prodigal that goes through a very difficult time. I'm not saying every pastor's home, but very often pastors' kids are targeted by the enemy, and we will have a prodigal that comes along in the life of a pastor. I just want to tell the pastors' wives and anyone else who's listening today, having a prodigal does not mean that you failed as a parent. It does not mean that you failed as a Christian. It simply means that child has gotten to a point in their lives when the journey is not about you, but it's about themselves. And they have come to a place where they have got to start making their decisions on how they're going to live for God and what they're going to do. So prodigals often will go back and they'll say, well, the church was just this particular thing, or the church was this thing, or this person did this to me in the church. And a lot of times if we give them the tools to deal with the unrealistic expectations as children, then they will have those same tools as they become adults. When we had our oldest daughter, Jordan, left home when she was 19 years old and decided she no longer lived for the Lord and or wanted to live for the Lord. She came back about 6 months later and made things right and repented. And Randy asked her one day, he said, what caused you to turn away from the things of God? And she said, Dad, I didn't know that church people could be so mean. And she said, you God always protected us from knowing what was going on in the church. And as a result of that, when I began to see that they really, she said, sometimes people that are in the church are not really saved, are they?
Well,
yeah, you're right. They have feet of clay just like we do. And so it was a moment of epiphany for her when she realized that we had protected her from knowing that people, as Mark Rutland said, sheep bite. And so as a result of that, she found out that maybe everybody that's in the church is not saved. Maybe everybody that's in the church does not want you to succeed and do well. And it really rattled her world. It was not anything we did wrong. It was just that she needed to work her own journey. And so if you've got a prodigal today, please don't feel that you failed as a parent, because you didn't. It's you've done the best you could with the tools that you had. And as a result of that, God is going to bring this prodigal home.
Yes, amen. I have a prodigal. She's been a prodigal since she was 17, and she's 36. Wow. But I know God has his hand upon her life. And her name's Bethany. Anybody watching, please pray for my sweet Bethany. God's working on her, and I know he's going to use her mightily.
Amen. Amen. Just to tell you this, I have Randy preached a sermon years and years and years ago when Jordan actually was going through a prodigal state. It's called Pathways of a Prodigal. And if anybody wants a copy of that, I think it's a two message series. I'm not real sure, but I think so. And if anybody wants a copy of that, they can just contact me and I'll see that they can get one. Okay. I'll get it to you. Thank you. They can contact me on Facebook if they want to, Jan, and I can see that they can get a copy. Tell them how much it is and shipping and everything.
It is so amazing, touching on so many subjects about your kids, about situations, issues with church people, and how she dealt with them. And it's funny, and it's just going to draw you in. And get the book. Thank you so much for joining us again today with Jelly. I trust this has really encouraged you as you may be on a journey of raising pastors' kids, or you've been there, done that, and you can nod your head with everything she says. But sweet woman of God, please know, Jelly's right. If you have a prodigal, don't feel like, oh, I failed, because I know that's the first thing the enemy did to me. He tried to make me feel like I was such a failure. If only I shoulda, woulda, coulda. If I shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of song I would sing and dance to. And one day my husband just said to me, he goes, baby, we did everything we knew to do with what we knew at the time. Would we do things different now? Of course, but we can't go back. But what we can do is go forward. So just be encouraged and know that you're doing the best you can. But if you have questions, reach out to me. I do not have all the answers, but I can pray with you. I can share thoughts with you. I will leave my email right here. Feel free to reach out to me. I love you, and I'm so glad you joined us. And Jelly, thank you for joining us, my precious friend. God bless you.
Thank you for watching Silently Bleeding, Finding Hope for the Pastor's Wife. I look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to leave me comments down below, and make sure and subscribe. If you want to know every time a new video is coming out, hit the bell. I would be so delighted if you would also hit the like button, and feel free to share this video with anyone you know that this would encourage. Blessings, my friends.